It seems to me that food shortages are just the beginning of a crisis that seems to break out whenever you do get food shortages. We had the Arab Spring. We've got some issues in Sri Lanka right now. What happens once the food shortages hit to financial markets, to politics, to, I guess, social instability?
So I said there's going to be a food shortage because there's a fertilizer shortage, okay? Why is there a fertilizer shortage? Because most of the fertilizer in the world comes from Russia. What's going on with Russia? Well, there's a war in Ukraine. We put sanctions on them. We, meaning the United States, but Australia and Canada and the EU have all joined in. So it starts out with this, feel good. We're gonna hit the Russians where it hurts. We're gonna cut down their exports, and they're not going to get foreign currency and all that. And we have, and that will be one of the effects. But all these things boomerang, because these markets are not isolated. They're not bilateral markets. They're world markets. If you raise the price of oil because of one set of sanctions, that affects the price of energy and oil and natural gas worldwide. It's not as if Texas or Australia or any other country are insulated from the world price. We all pay or receive the world price, as the case may be. So, okay, no fertilizer out of Russia, no planning, no food 8 months from now. But it's not just that. So how does food get from one place to another? Well, trucks, railroads, or cargo vessels, they don't run on solar energy, they run on fuel. And again, the price of oil, refined products, kerosene, which is jet fuel, basically is going up. You have to add those transportation costs to the cost of the finished goods because you do. That's how you get them to market. And then you get into trucker shortages. And so I don't want to belabor it, but the point is, when people think of the supply chain as here's a manufacturer, here's the retail store, this guy breaks down and doesn't get to the shelf. Well, okay, that's a really simplified supply chain. Not wrong, but the point is there might be, a trucker, transportation lanes, a warehouse, a distribution center between the manufacturer and the retail space. And by the way, where does the manufacturer get its inputs? Raw materials, strategic metals, et cetera. And they're separate, and energy runs the whole thing. And there are separate transportation lanes from the raw material and the sources of seeds or whatever it may be to the manufacturer. In the case of grain, you don't pick wheat in the field, you pick wheat in the field, but it's got to be processed and turned into flour, and the flour's got to be packaged. Where's the packaging come from? So the thing is, you can go on ad infinitum, but that's the point. You can go on ad infinitum, and a breakdown of any one part of it affects the whole thing. The one last point on the food shortages. Russia and Ukraine together are responsible for about 25% of global grain exports. So, wheat, barley, and corn, and a few other grains. That doesn't mean they produce 25% of that means they're responsible for 25% of exports. Australia, Canada, and the US are all major grain producers, but we use most of it ourselves. And not for human consumption, it's used for animal feed because we like hamburgers and pork and chicken. So, and by the way, those prices are going up too. So, but what's left over for export, okay, that is what it is. But Russia and Ukraine are two of the biggest exporters. But when you look at it from the recipient's point of view, say, okay, you're the exporters, who are the importers? And what you discover, there's a list of countries where they get 70 to 100% of their imports from Russia and Ukraine. So that the amount that those two countries are exporting, Lebanon, it gets 100% of its grain from Ukraine. Egypt, Somalia, Sudan, Kenya, other Central African countries, other Middle Eastern countries, Jordan, et cetera, get, as I say, between 70 and 100% of their grain, either from Ukraine or Russia. And then take that a step further and say, okay, well, what are the populations of those countries? And I actually did this work and this research and just combine the populations. It comes to 700 million people, or about 10% of the world's population. So you could be looking at 10% of the world's population in near starvation conditions within 9 months. And that is a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented magnitude. And to your point, Nick, does that lead to wars? Yeah, that's what comes next. people are hungry, they'll do anything to get food. Pardon me. And you say, well, can you have emergency exports from, let's say, the United States or Canada, Australia, et cetera? Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a humanitarian effort, but the point is it won't be enough. What we're talking about is unprecedented.
Yeah, I would suggest that some of the wealthier nations actually start to buy up some of the grain that is exported and make that situation even worse, because the wealthier nations that do produce, like the US and Australia, they've got the same fertilizer problems. I also want to quickly mention.
So just as a quick aside, and along those lines, Indonesia, which is not a high-income country, it's a developing economy, but it's fairly well up, a huge population, well over 200 million people just in Indonesia. Just a week or so ago, they banned palm oil exports, 100%. Well, what's palm oil used for? Well, it's kind of the cooking oil for a large part of the world. It's how people fry everything. And so, and then that's a source of protein and fat. We need a certain amount of fat in our diet. So this is starting already, but it's going to get a lot worse.